Twitter. Twitter is sometimes described as the short message service, SMS, of the internet, because the site lets people communicate with micromessages of 140 characters or fewer. According to the Twitter website, as of March 2011, there were more than 175 million Twitter users, and more than 95 million tweets, i.e. Twitter messages, were issued each day. One of the most interesting things about Twitter is that while it's possible to keep your Twitter network restricted, so that you have to approve followers before they can see your tweets, the vast majority of people and companies using it keep their networks open, so you can follow anyone or anything, from Joe Schmo to JetBlue, and hear what they're saying. National politicians, Fortune 500 CEOs, and top journalists are all among the ranks of active Twitter users, and by following them, you become part of their conversations. Another benefit to the general open-door ethos of Twitter is that it can be a way to form new connections. As I was writing this chapter, I logged into my Twitter account, posted a tweet, and within seconds received an email that I had a new follower. Some people are even using Twitter to stage distinctly 21st century get-togethers. Lance Armstrong, who has more than 2 million Twitter followers, created a scene in the summer of 2009 when he was in Scotland and tweeted, "Hey Glasgow, Scotland, I'm coming your way tomorrow. Who wants to go for a bike ride?" Hundreds of people showed up in response and spent the day biking along with Armstrong and connecting with one another. Twitter updates inform you of what the people in your network are doing, seeing, thinking, or reading. Many times a stream of tweets will be purely informational, but it's also possible to turn them into a dialogue. Whenever Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, travels, he tweets questions about the destination he is visiting and gets hundreds of tweets back in response. He says it's a great way to learn about a place from the local perspective and start a micro-conversation about it. Although Twitter is particularly effective for people or companies with substantial followings, it can still be useful even if you are not a well-known personality. My friend Sean is a Lego artist and author. He tweets about upcoming times and locations of book signings, or an exhibition of one of his pieces, or if an article or video about his work has recently been posted somewhere. It's his way of letting his followers keep up with what he's doing, and when he's having special events, creating opportunities for connection and meeting up. Live the law. Learning the lingo. Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter are currently the 3 most popular social networking sites, but there are many others, and the landscape is changing all the time. Each site uses its own vocabulary and provides different benefits, restrictions, and features, though the basic terms and functionalities often bear similarities to one another. Here is a summary of the main terminology used in social networking, and how it varies between what are, at the moment, the 3 most heavily used sites. Profile. Your profile is your online presence, which can also be thought of as your homepage. You have options for personalizing your profile, and you can choose to include as much or as little information as you want. You can add photos to your profile so that other people can put a face to your name. Privacy settings give you further control over who can access the information displayed in your profile. Each site requests different types of details for fleshing out your profile. A Facebook profile acts as a personalized journal, photo album, message board. Multiple sections allow for a great deal of customization of your profile. You can display your hometown, birthday, relationship status, contact information, work history, schools attended, photos from a recent trip, favorite movies, and on and on. A LinkedIn profile functions almost as an online resume, with detailed information about your work history, education, interests, and group associations. Your profile also displays testimonials that your connections may have posted about your work, essentially online letters of reference. A Twitter profile is the least robust, simply displaying your name, location, web address, brief bio, the numbers of people you follow and who follow you, and a history of your tweets. Person in your network. Your network consists of those people you accept into your online circle, and the people who accept you into theirs. Social networking sites use different terms to connote the member of a network. The terms are, for Facebook, friend, LinkedIn, connection, and for Twitter, follower. Updates. The social networking component of each site comes not just in the posted profile information, but in the real-time exchanges that can occur. Updates let you post a short note about what you are currently doing, thinking, or experiencing, and share it with your network. Many professionals use updates as a way to share information about events they are attending or hosting with colleagues and associates. Facebook uses the term status update. Fill in the status field on your profile page and click the button to broadcast it to your Facebook friends. LinkedIn uses the term network update. Post questions, thoughts, or article links via LinkedIn's homepage or through the update link on your own profile page. Twitter uses the term tweet. This is the essence of Twitter. Anything you want to say, post it in 140 characters or fewer. Notifications. You can create a setting so the site sends you up-to-the-minute messages when people in your network post an update or change their profile. Facebook allows you to pick and choose what information you want to receive and how you want to receive it. You set up your preferences to be notified when someone sends you a friend request, comments on your status update, or uploads a photo, for instance. These notifications can be sent via email or text. Smartphone apps give you access to Facebook while you're on the go. LinkedIn allows you to decide how often you want to receive notifications, immediately, daily, weekly, and what types of information, events, group activity, individual connections activity, you want to be notified about. There are downloadable smartphone apps so that you can access the site on your mobile device. Twitter requires you to set up notifications individually for each person you are following. Then you can arrange to be notified of new tweets by text or email. There are numerous Twitter platforms for tweeting from your smartphone. Wall. This is a term solely used by Facebook. Your profile wall is essentially a virtual message board. The people in your network, your Facebook friends, can post messages on your wall and comment on your photos, videos, or status updates. Bear in mind that it is not a private forum. Anyone in your Facebook network can see what has been posted on your wall. And if mutual friends post things to one another's walls, you'll see those messages too. Regards. The 3 most effective things I do to stay in people's minds are also the methods that feel the most natural and authentic, because they come from a genuine place. That is to say, they reflect the value I place on connections and building them. One of my methods is to introduce people I think should meet one another. I am the common link as these new relationships spark, and therefore I am front of mind. The second is to invite people to or inform them of upcoming events that they might find of interest. Even if none of us ends up attending the events, people will know that I was thinking of them, which will in turn prompt them to think of me. The third thing I regularly do is to send my regards. It may seem trite to say, "Tell so-and-so I said hello," but it is an easy thing to do, and can even be helpful to the person conveying the message. It provides a ready topic of conversation, and gives people a chance to leverage the law of similarity. Get out there. Hearing someone's name mentioned again and again in positive contexts can build professional credibility and help establish comfortable rapport and ease. Creating familiarity doesn't require scheduled meetings or planned conversations either. It can be done without having actual FaceTime or giving the impression that you are hounding someone. By simply following up on shared details and harnessing electronic resources, it is possible to steadily create familiarity and associate your name with appropriate ideas and events. Remember to pursue these strategies in ways that feel true and authentic to you, and that aren't obtrusive or pushy. Don't get in someone's face. Just be in their circle. Refresh your memory. The law of familiarity. People feel comfortable with who and what they know. Build familiarity. Stay in someone's mind through social networking applications, notes of well-wishing, personal recommendations, and sending your regards. Continue the conversation. Leverage technology and social networking sites to increase your opportunities to interact. Keep it authentic. Harness electronic media tools in ways that seem natural and true to you. Don't get in someone's face. Just be in their circle. Chapter 10. The Law of Giving. It is one of the most beautiful compensations of life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself. Ralph Waldo Emerson, 19th century writer and philosopher. Just as I was getting ready to make the leap from the finance industry to starting my own business, I attended the Columbia Women in Business, CWIB conference, and sat in on a panel about entrepreneurship. As someone daunted by the thought of going out on my own, I found myself particularly interested in one panelist named Amy. She had already successfully launched a business very similar in structure and services to the one I was planning. On top of that, Amy was articulate and eloquent when speaking about the experience on the panel. I was immediately in awe of her and wanted to speak to her. Rather than compete with everyone swarming the stage at the end of the session, I instead sought her out at lunch and effusively told her how impressed I was by her career path and her work. She smiled, genuinely honored by the compliment. We chatted for the rest of the lunch about some of the challenges she had faced when establishing her business. By the end of lunch, I was even more in awe of her and everything she'd done, and I decided to take a chance and ask her if she'd be willing to meet me for coffee one day soon to continue the conversation. She suggested that we meet for lunch instead. A week later, we sat in a restaurant for 3 hours while she poured out wisdom and advice. I've never forgotten her answer to my question about how she got started. She said, "I just hung out my shingle and said, 'Open for business.'" Those words gave me the courage to do just that. I so appreciated the time and insights she so generously gave me, with no thought of how the favor might be returned. After that lunch, we touched base a couple of times a year, and even though I never did find a way to reciprocate her kindnesses, I always held her in my mind as my example of how to give to others. I don't think she ever even knew the impact she had on my career with just that one conversation. My grandmother had the ability to induce guilt with one phrase, muttered in her heavy Yiddish accent. "Oi, what I do for you," she'd say with a roll of her eyes, implying that she always did more for us than we could ever do for her. This chapter is about adopting exactly the opposite attitude, and instead thinking, what can I do for you? One of the strongest ways to increase likability and foster a connection is to demonstrate that we understand someone else's needs and are happy to help fulfill them. By drawing on what we have learned about the other laws of likability, we can apply our creativity to expand the kinds of value we have to offer others, giving to them in ways that speak directly to what might be useful for them. "I'll scratch your back if you scratch mine," is usually the way that phrase ends. The reality, however, is that there is extraordinary value in doing things for others simply because you want to, not because you expect anything in return. That's the law of giving. Do because you can. Give first. Giving creates value. It doesn't always mean exerting major effort or making grand gestures. Even by extending yourself in small ways, you are sending the signal that you think the other person is worth the effort and that you want to help. Sometimes it is easy to see how you may help another person. Other times it's not as obvious, especially with regard to someone who may be more senior than you. But everyone needs and appreciates assistance. Don't underestimate your ability to bring value to someone else. Several years ago, through a mutual friend, I was introduced to James, a top executive at a company whose customers were high school students. I had an idea for a series of skills workshops for teenagers, and James and I had lunch to discuss whether the workshops would be a good fit with his company's offerings. We agreed fairly quickly that my workshops weren't the right complement for his company. But our conversation was stimulating nonetheless, and we continued discussing business challenges in specific and general ways. Both financially and professionally, James was significantly more successful than I was. But by listening attentively to what he told me about his work and exerting some extra effort to follow up, I was able to offer him assistance. I demonstrated the e-Blackboard site at the university where I was teaching, and sent him book recommendations I thought might be useful. I wanted to show him that I comprehended what he told me, had the ability to suggest solutions and resources, and thought his endeavors were worth supporting. Nothing I did was any big deal, but it demonstrated that I valued our discussion and his work. One of my coaching colleagues, Tanya, has a great story about her transition from the corporate world to establishing her own business as a coach and trainer. She was traveling frequently for business, and as part of that work, she often had to hire independent trainers to conduct off-site sessions. After working with and closely observing these contractors numerous times, and paying them top dollar for their services, she realized that she could conduct these sessions just as effectively, and she wanted to give it a shot. She talked to her boss, and he went out of his way to support her, sending her to educational seminars to develop her skill sets, and giving her opportunities to conduct internal training seminars. Her boss still expected Tanya to carry her regular workload too, but he wanted to keep her motivated and happy, and so he determined that if she wanted to acquire these new skills while she was a part of his team, he was going to make sure she did it well. He created a supportive office environment, which let Tanya know he really was behind her. Tanya eventually did so well with the internal training sessions she conducted, and enjoyed the work so much, that she left the company to establish her own business. Her former boss became one of her biggest clients. Doing things for others and being generous with your support and your time are likable qualities. They also foster the law of familiarity, keeping you in people's minds and giving them reasons to want to stay in touch with you and continue growing the relationship. In Chapter 8, I said that there are 2 things you want to do before you end the conversation. Make the person you are talking to feel good, mood memory, and create the opportunity for follow-up. Extending a helping hand is one of the best ways to follow up, and it also opens the door for continued contact going forward. With every interaction, you increase familiarity and similarity. The law of giving is a powerful enhancement of every other law of likability. Do unto others. There are so many ways to provide value to another person, and everyone has something to offer. Whether it's by suggesting resources, creating opportunities for meaningful interactions, or offering feedback and support, we can employ the law of giving by seeking out chances to give back. People tend to respond to situations in the same tried and true ways, which works on a certain level. If something has been effective in the past, chances are it will prove so again in the future. But sticking only to these well-tested methods can narrow our view of what we can do for others. Perhaps we feel as if we don't have time to make the extra effort, or we wonder when doing so would be appropriate. By broadening our perspectives and expanding our creative approaches to situations, we can understand that giving is a never-ending process and benefits us throughout the lengths of our careers. By embracing opportunities to help others, we can recognize all the ways, big and small, that giving adds value to our relationships. Connections. I have always been a matchmaker. As soon as I meet someone, I start thinking about other people I know whom they would want to meet. When I put people together, I'm putting all the other laws into action. First, I get curious. Then I focus on listening. And then my synapses start to fire when I recognize similarities. As I'm talking with someone, ideas about whom I might connect that person with jump into my mind. I'll be thinking, I know someone who used to work at that company. Or, I have a friend who attended that coaching program. Or, I know someone in your field who also just moved to the area. The points of connection continue unfolding. Before I introduce people, I always ask them if they want to be introduced, since I only want to make the introduction if both people are interested. I'll elaborate on this subject in the section Favors and Advice later in this chapter. I'm also mindful that introductions are an extension of the person who makes them and carry the weight of that person's reputation. When I've been introduced to someone, because a colleague thinks there'd be an opportunity for connection between me and the other person, I always update the introducer about the progress of the relationship once the introduction has been made. By connecting 2 people for whatever good reasons, you are applying the laws of familiarity and giving, and creating opportunities for meaningful interactions to take place. Invitations. Who doesn't like to get invited to the party? Extending an invitation to an event is one of the easiest things you can do for someone. Think about what you have in common, interests, background, people, and then look for opportunities to include that person in events or activities that speak to that commonality. Inform others about an event. Every year I attend CWIB, the conference I mentioned in the opening story of this chapter. It is one of the best ways I can spend a day. The speakers are engaging, the topics are timely, and the day quite simply is fun. But more than anything else, I find the conference inspiring. It is impossible not to be inspired when you are in a room full of other professionals, hundreds of them, who want to help one another. The attendees are mostly women, but each year there are surprisingly more and more men who have discovered the value of the event, and their enthusiastic attendance further increases the opportunities for forming meaningful connections. Of course, I want to share the event with others, including, while I'm at it, the readers of this book. Go to www.cwib.org for more information. As soon as the date is announced each year, I send an email to everyone I think would be interested. So far, someone has always joined me, and I am thrilled to be able to introduce people to the value of the conference. A conference is just one example of an event to which you can extend an invitation. If you belong to a club, group, or organization that allows non-members to attend, that is the perfect chance to think about inviting someone to the next gathering. My former colleague Frederick is an adventure junkie who belongs to a club of extreme sports enthusiasts who arrange trips to do whitewater rafting, bungee jumping, and spelunking. When a new hire named Tony joined our team, and Frederick discovered that he had similar interests, he immediately forwarded the club link to Tony. It was a simple gesture, but it presented Tony with new opportunities for doing things he loved, made him feel welcomed to our team, and showed that Frederick was friendly and inclusive, which quickly established a basis for strong collegial communication and trust between them. There are any number of events that can provide opportunities for further contact and continued connection. I always appreciate hearing about webinars or lectures that pertain to my work. I often invite other people to participate in a volunteer activity I'm doing, if I think it would interest them. And right after I'd moved to a new town, I was pretty excited to get invited to a women's night out. It was a fun and completely casual event that offered the chance to form all kinds of new connections. The events you inform people of don't even have to be ones you are attending. They can simply be things that crossed your path and that you thought the person might be interested in. Don't flood people's inboxes, of course, and don't invite everyone you know to everything you hear about. Make it personal. This shows people that you're thinking specifically of them. Create a group. When I attended CWIB for the first time in the early 2000s, I was still transitioning from my finance life into my current career. I was incredibly motivated by meeting so many women who were either already established in my new field, in the early stages of transitioning into it, like I was, or somewhere in between. I even suggested we start an informal peer mentoring group to help each other out. And so I emailed 4 of the women I met about the idea, set a date, and then almost called it off when only 2 of them could make it. Looking back, I'm so glad I didn't call it off. There were just 3 of us at the first meeting, sitting in the cafe at a bookstore with no agenda. We simply shared what we were working on. A month or 2 later, I tried again to get our original group of 5 together. This time everyone could make it, and we all felt energized by the gathering. We began meeting regularly. As I started connecting with more and more people in my new field, I expanded the invite list to our get-togethers. Finally, we moved from the bookstore to my apartment for our first official meeting. More than a dozen women attended. I had formed a group. Over time, the group got so large that the location changed again. We established a Yahoo group so that we could share our resources, events, books, and contact information collectively online. We now use LinkedIn for this purpose, and there are more than 50 women who participate. Each member was personally invited to join our network by someone who already belonged, and our informal association has become a tremendous way to support and help one another. Groups can be formed around any shared interest, professional or personal. Book clubs, investment clubs, and poker nights are all great excuses for connecting with people who have shared interests and inviting others to join you in forming the connections. Create an event. One of my colleagues, Larry, organizes a monthly lunch to which he invites a rotating group of core business associates. Everyone pays for themselves, and Larry arranges a set menu with the restaurant so that costs are reasonable and anticipated. The lunches are always an excellent chance to connect with new people in your field, catch up with acquaintances, and think creatively about possible collaborations or resource sharing. The industry lunch is just one example of ways to include people in a shared event. Think about what would interest people in your network, and plan a way to connect them through an activity. organize a cooking lesson by a local chef, invite a financial planner you know to hold a seminar. The event doesn't have to cost you anything beyond a little time and effort, and the rewards will be countless. My neighbor Bonnie, a former PTA president and mom of a high school junior, approached the superintendent of our local school system about creating a college prep curriculum. Budget cuts meant that new programs couldn't be funded, so Bonnie responded by creating a workshop at her home for students to prepare for college interviews. She contacted parents to arrange for a group of students to gather at her house and invited me over to lead the workshop. The event sparked many productive discussions afterward, and the students acquired valuable skills, and in the end, it generated such interest that the parents sought to expand the program. Information and articles. Marge was the head of training at a high-profile museum. We were introduced through a mutual friend, and commonalities between us were not immediately obvious. She was much older than I was, had spent her career in a field that I didn't know much about, and had something of a reticent demeanor, tending not to share too much personal information in conversations, and keeping everything strictly professional. Right before I was about to conduct a team-building seminar at the museum, I received news that my son had a serious medical condition. I suppose that Marge picked up on something in my voice or my body language, because she asked me if I was all right. I was so overwhelmed by the news that I didn't even realize the extent to which I was explaining my distress. I just poured it all out. I was so grateful that someone was there, offering to listen. I had no idea that my personal disclosure would lead to her making one of her own. It turned out that Marge's son had a serious medical condition as well, so grave that at age 15 he was completely dependent on others for everything and lived with full-time care. Wow. Her story stopped me in my tracks. She said that she wasn't telling me this to make me feel better or worse, but just to let me know that she understood. She had been dealing with her son's extremely difficult medical issues for years. Her openness steadied me, and I was able to refocus on the seminar and solidly deliver. But even more important was what came afterward. Marge began sending me articles and information to help me navigate the challenges my family and I were now dealing with. As I learned more about her situation, I began thinking of ways I could be of help to her. We shared strategies, relevant news stories, and medical updates. There was true reciprocity between us, born out of care and understanding. At some point, we both realized that we had become trusted, valued friends. And though we continue to work together, it is not just about the work anymore. It's about the relationship, the friendship. And as I always say, I want to work with people I'm friends with. And that's where I am with Marge. Somewhere during a conversation, you are likely going to hear about something that truly interests the other person. When following up with people afterward, you have the perfect opportunity for forwarding links or information they might find engaging. Even if no ideas come to you during the conversation, make a note on the back of your business card or next to their name in your BlackBerry about what their interests are. This allows you to tuck away the information until you do hear about something that will be of interest to them, or if you want to be more proactive, to put a little effort into finding something that may be helpful, which may be as simple as an online article or the names of some books. Take 5 minutes to query your network for opinions or resources that the person might find useful. A word of caution, which is largely common sense but bears mentioning. Understand your audience. What one person finds valuable may be another person's spam. Only forward information and links that speak to the person's genuine interests. Favors and advice. For many people, favors are difficult to request, but easy to grant. The same can be true of advice. We consult people we admire, but underplay the wisdom and insights we have to pass on to someone else. We all have knowledge, skills, experience, and unique perspectives to contribute. Sharing these things extends the circles of context for connecting among our networks and gives us opportunities to deepen our relationships with others. Even if you are just starting out in your career, you have valuable perspectives and advice to share. Older colleagues are often curious about the outlook of younger generations, and they could be eager to hear your views. Here are examples of some of the favors I've recently done for others. At the end of the list, you add at least 3 things you did or can do for other people. Think about your life and your associations, and add 3 more ideas for giving advice or doing a favor. Sent a PR lead to a colleague. Answered questions related to my area of expertise. Gave advice to colleagues about pricing their services. Referred a potential client to a friend. Talked to interested colleagues about the finance profession, training profession, and entrepreneurship. Talked to my friends' children about the universities I attended and at which I teach. Gave away the clothes, toys, and books that my kids have outgrown. Invited someone to join me at an invitation-only event. Favors and advice are things you should offer freely, but conscientiously. A favor is only a favor when someone wants it. And stay aware of when the circle of favors is such that your favor for someone else involves a favor to you. This happens frequently when introducing people to one another. Whenever I meet someone curious about transitioning into hedge funds, I reach out to my friend Daryl, who has been in that field for his whole career. Daryl is always happy to speak with anyone I put him in touch with, but he does it as a favor to me more than anything else. Make the effort to connect people with the information and resources you have at your disposal, but stay mindful of how you do it. Don't wear out your welcome by introducing too many people to the same desirable contact. The point is to truly add value, not take advantage of someone else's goodwill. Likewise, if advice is given without sensitivity, it can come off as someone being nosy or trying to tell you what to do. When my friend Sally was hired by the employer of another one of our friends, Fran, the two of them ran into trouble in the office, even though they'd been friends for a while. During Sally's first week on the job, Fran was full of advice for her about how to acclimate, pointing out which colleagues were irritating, which ones were good team players, and so on. Fran was only trying to help, but Sally felt as if she'd immediately been restricted in terms of how she could behave in the office and whom she could interact with. If she formed a connection with someone Fran didn't particularly care for, she felt as if she was being disloyal to Fran. Things between them got tense. It took some time for them to grow comfortable working together and get their friendship back on track. The lesson here: when in doubt, ask permission. Simply inquire whether the other person wants to hear your advice by saying something such as, "Are you interested in an opinion, or is now not the right time?" Or, "Do you want my advice, or do you just need to get this off your chest?" Live the law. What can I do for you? Create an action plan for following the law of giving. Based on the previous sections, think about specifically what you will do, who you will do it for, and when you will get it done. Write down at least one thing you will do in each category, and choose a different person for each planned action. Then do it. A connection action plan. Who, why, to whom, and when. An invitation action plan. To what, who, and when. An information or article action plan. What, who, when. A favor or advice action plan. What, who, when. What goes around comes around. When you give freely to others, not only do you increase your likability and aid other people, you almost always get something unintended in return. I am an avid traveler, and my conversations with people often come around to the subject of favorite vacation spots and destinations. If someone is headed to a place I've explored, I always offer to share my experiences. When I follow up with people after one of these conversations, I'll frequently reference a resort they mentioned, or forward links to places I think they might like to visit. Sometimes I even send along a few reviews I've uncovered. This stokes my own thirst for exploring new places. During one of my conversations with James, the top executive, he once mentioned to me some technical issues he was facing with a project under development. I am definitely not a techie, but my husband definitely is. I called up Mike, explained what James was trying to accomplish, and learned about the options. Then it was my pleasure to share those insights with James. Not only was I able to save him some effort and pass along useful knowledge, I also got educated during the process. It was a win-win experience. And then there are the times when, because of ways you've willingly given in the past, you find yourself unexpectedly on the receiving end. More than a year after I met James, we once again had an opportunity to talk. This time I was explaining to him a business idea of mine. More than anything else, it was a chance for me to hear myself flesh out the idea to an astute businessman. James replied that when I was ready to pursue the idea, he would happily help. I didn't expect this gracious offer, and was deeply touched by it, But that is part of what is behind the law of giving. When you simply do something for other people out of a genuine desire to help them, more often than not, they're going to want to reciprocate. Giving inspires giving. The result is mutual growth and a stronger relationship. Be honest with yourself about your intentions. If you do have expectations that you will be repaid for your efforts, that's not the same as giving freely. So don't try to disguise it as such. Your motivations will be detected at some level by the other person. To truly harness the law of giving and its rewards, you have to genuinely feel that you don't expect anything in return. Pay it forward. This chapter opened with a story about Amy, who is an example to me of what it means to give to someone else, without expectations. I remember that when I got together with Amy, I paid for lunch. It seemed like the least I could do, since she had shared her insights and experiences with me so generously, and I had gathered hordes of knowledge from the conversation. I remember feeling as if I could never repay her for all the wisdom she so graciously bestowed, and to be honest, I still feel that way. What I have done to try to repay her kindness and generosity in some way is to emulate her giving. At every possible chance, I pay it forward. When someone asks me for a favor, some advice, or some of my time, I almost unequivocally answer yes. I give willingly, and in as much abundance as I can. Amy put me on this path of generosity, and taught me that what you give is what you get. Even when it seems as if we are not getting anything in return for our efforts, patience can help us understand how the things we do positively impact ours and other people's lives in many different ways. That law of patience is what we will explore in Chapter 11. Refresh your memory. The law of giving. Give first. Do because you can, and because giving creates value. Do unto others. There are countless ways to give freely to others, including making introductions to other people they might benefit from knowing, extending invitations to events and activities, sharing resources, doing favors, and giving advice. You can help. Be proactive about determining how you can help the people in your circle. Set the law of giving in motion by creating an action plan detailing what you are going to do, who you will do it for, and when you will do it. Then do it. What goes around comes around. You may not always be the explicit recipient of the law of giving, but when you give to others, more often than not, you reap rewards in return. Pay it forward. Repay kindnesses and generosity bestowed upon you by continuing the giving. Extend yourself freely to others to sustain the positive cycle of giving. Chapter 11. The Law of Patience. A man who is a master of patience is master of everything else. George Saville, 17th century statesman. More than a year ago, I received an email from Aaron, the director of learning and development initiatives at a media company. He was looking for someone to conduct a series of training seminars, and one of my former NYU students had recommended me to him. After briefing me on what he wanted, I put together a proposal and sent it to him. Then his agenda changed. We brainstormed more possibilities, and I prepared another proposal, but the department still wasn't ready to greenlight the program. I continued checking in with him from time to time, and told him to consider me a resource, which he did. He reached out to me frequently with questions about training companies, other independent trainers, topics, pricing, and industry resources. I provided him with suggestions and recommended training companies that cover topics my business, Executive Essentials, did not. Every time he had a thought for a new training direction, I was on his list of people to get a proposal from. After drafting my third proposal for services, and still not signing a contract, I was at the point where many people would have written off the client. To be honest, I really didn't think Aaron's company would ever become one of my clients. But that didn't stop me from quickly responding to his questions. With patience, no expectations, and a continued desire to build the relationship and help as I could, I became his go-to person in many situations. Once he queried me about a vendor he was vetting, but I wasn't familiar with his business, so I sent out the vendor name to my network and shared with him the feedback I received. 6 proposals, and more than 12 months later, I got another proposal request from him, and this time I landed the job. In this case, The 7th time was the charm. They say that patience is a virtue. This might be naturally true for some people, but it certainly isn't true for me. Being patient is difficult for me, but it also yields incredible value. The benefits of patience come back to you in so many ways. That is why the subject of patience is the culminating chapter of this book. Some of you reading the story about Aaron may have been thinking, forget it. I would have given up on that potential client long ago. Life is too short to put forth so much effort for free. And it would have seemed reasonable, given the situation, to discontinue the relationship and cut my losses. If I had, though, I never would have landed a client with whom I now work regularly. In the end, you have to do what feels right for you. I'm not a Pollyanna who believes that everyone is nice and has good intentions, but I do believe that most people have good intentions, and I choose to believe the best about people until they give me reasons not to. As you read this chapter, leave behind any tendencies toward impatience, jumping to conclusions, or assuming negative interpretations of a situation, even if only for the duration of the chapter. It is often easier to shut down or turn away and give in to impatience, because it requires less effort than being patient. But it can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, and you may limit yourself as a result. Give it time. Things happen. Early on in life, I learned the saying quid pro quo, one thing in return for another, and for the first part of my career, I tried to live by that guideline. If someone did something for me, I understood there was an expectation that the favor would be returned. I thought I was living by a standard of equality, and it not only made sense to me, it seemed fair. It took me a while to realize that not everyone lived by this code of fairness. I found myself wondering when my good deeds and kind gestures would be returned. I remember one colleague, Todd, who had asked for a few favors when we first started working together, and I'd happily done them. Soon, though, I realized that it was a one-way street with him. I started feeling annoyed by him, and treating him with a bit of an attitude. I even started to avoid him, because I got tense whenever I was around him. He had no idea why I was acting that way toward him, and at the time I wasn't self-aware enough to recognize the reasons for my behavior either. When I think back on the situation now, I can see that I felt slighted, and interpreted his lack of reciprocity as him taking advantage of me. My impatience and my expectations got in the way, and our work relationship deteriorated. During my exit interview with that company, I learned that Todd had given his manager a glowing recommendation about me. Knowing that I wanted to work on a project involving his manager's client, Todd put in a good word for me. I just never knew. I wonder what may have been different in my career, and in my relationship with Todd, if I hadn't constantly been thinking, where's mine? What I have learned is to let go of expectations. I don't mean to say that if you don't have expectations, you can't be disappointed. Not at all. Getting rid of expectations isn't about flattening your experience so that you're never disappointed. Rather, it's about freeing your mind of the burden of waiting for the expectations to be fulfilled. You have enough to think about, so take expectations off your list. Patience produces results. This is the essence of the law of patience. Give it time. Things happen. Your results may not be exactly what you expect, and they may not happen when you expect them. In fact, you may not even be aware of the results at all, as I learned with Todd. It comes back to you. I could have called this chapter What Goes Around Comes Around, because I believe that if you act selflessly in your relationships, if you make it about the other person and not about yourself, good things will come of those actions. Sometimes the fruits of your interactions appear quickly, as when a conversation turns into a contact that turns into a job. Other times a benefit may show up unexpectedly, years in the future. And to be honest, sometimes nothing at all happens, and that's all right too. In Chapter 9, I told you about Mark. He's a master at keeping his name in people's minds. He regularly holds intimate luncheons, at which a diverse array of people mix, including many journalists and media professionals. The lunches are one of Mark's ways of giving back. By connecting all these people who have been important in his professional journey, he creates opportunities for them to build meaningful working relationships with one another. And he found that soon after he started hosting the lunches, not only did the people in his professional circle start forming strong connections with one another, but the impact of the connections had a rippling effect. Even he was on the receiving end one time, when a reporter he didn't already know called with an interview request. It seems that Mark had been pointed out to this reporter by one of his media colleagues. Here's one of my favorite examples of how it comes back to you has played out in my life. It's a story about my colleague Randy, whom I met 5 years ago while coaching students at NYU. She was a coach too, and had great energy. We exchanged our background information, and when Randy learned about one particular project I was working on, she quite boldly asked if I would help her get in touch with that client. I must admit I was a little surprised at her forwardness, but I kept in mind my rules. Always have the conversation. Stay open and curious, and do because you can. I'm always eager to help, but I'm also careful to ensure that when I make an introduction, it's beneficial to both parties. Introductions are an extension of your reputation. By introducing someone, you are extending your confidence in the person as being worth knowing. Since I didn't really know Randy yet, I wasn't sure how I felt about connecting her with one of my contacts so quickly. I responded, "I'm happy to talk more and get to know you and see how I might be able to help." Soon after that, Randy and I had lunch, and I learned that she had actually done work for the client in the past, but had lost her contacts because of turnover at the company. At the end of lunch, I said to her, "Since I've never seen your work, I'm not able to give a testimonial about it, but here's what I can do. I'm happy to connect you with the right person. Let them know you have done work for them in the past. Fill them in about how you and I know one another, and then you can take it from there." Randy seemed completely happy with the suggestion. After that, she regularly emailed me with updates about her communication with the client, and we continued to get to know each other. I invited her to join the networking group I'd founded, and she became an active participant. At one of the meetings, she ran over to me, eager to thank me. "For what?" I asked her, utterly confused. She told me excitedly that the client had just hired her for a large project. Even though I had only had a small hand in the accomplishment, she attributed it fully to me. I was, of course, thrilled that it had worked out for her, and then didn't really give it another thought. 4 years later, I was putting together a program on an extremely tight deadline, and needed some quick help with the material. I put out a frantic call to the members of my networking group, which Randy was still a part of. Randy replied to my call for help within minutes. She knew a lot about the topic, and was even willing to rearrange her schedule to talk with me. She sent me a bunch of articles, brought me a book when we met, and gave me a ton of good advice. It was a 15-minute conversation over coffee, and I got hours of value out of it. And that's the law of patience in action. I never said, hinted, or even thought, "You owe me," when I'd put Randy in touch with a client all those years ago. And I don't think that at the time she thought, "I owe her." But when she could give, she did. I have countless stories about how the law of giving has given back to me over time. Perhaps one of the most striking was when I was contacted by a man named Zeke, who worked at a hedge fund, and was looking for someone to conduct training sessions for the fund's directors. When I asked him who had referred him to me, he revealed that he had actually gotten my name from an HR forum, and couldn't remember the name of the person who posted the comment. We went on to do a huge amount of work together. To this day, I have no idea whom to thank for getting me one of my largest clients ever. I did know whom to thank when I got calls from the Metropolitan Museum of Art and Jazz at Lincoln Center. It turned out that Marge, the woman with whom I'd worked at another high-profile museum, and with whom I'd bonded because of our son's medical conditions, had recommended me immediately when training colleagues at these two cultural institutions asked her for recommendations, even though I'd never asked her for references or leads. The law of patience is never far from my mind. You never know when things will happen, but with patience, they do happen. Or it goes to someone else. If there is still a part of you that can't let go of the quid pro quo concept, think of the law of patience as an extension of the pay it forward idea. Sometimes your giving is repaid not to you, but passed on to someone else. You do something for someone, and the recipient of your kindness in turn shows a kindness to someone else. I am still awestruck by the generosity of Amy, the woman who gave me so much wisdom about launching my business, after I met her at the Columbia Women in Business Conference. We didn't even have that much follow-up contact after our initial meeting, a very productive lunch, and some phone calls and emails now and again. but her willingness to help me so freely had a powerful effect on me. For years afterward, I channeled that spirit, giving back to other entrepreneurs who were just starting out. I spoke to student entrepreneur groups at universities, arranged for phone conversations, and probably met with more than 100 people over the course of 5 years. Amy never knew that she was the one who inspired me to give in this way, and she had no expectations that her generosity would be repaid. Amy was the first of many people who so willingly gave their time to advise me, assist me, and teach me as I was growing my business. Their generous gifts have rebounded to the benefit of others, as I've consistently given my time, advice, and assistance to those around me. You may not know how your giving has inspired or positively influenced others, but have faith. The goodness you put out in the world multiplies. You'll get your chance. Even though I was profoundly influenced by Amy's generous spirit, I didn't think I'd ever get the chance to repay her directly for all that she'd done for me. Yet I'd been thinking about her a lot as I was writing the final section of the book, when completely out of the blue one day, I ran into her. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting at a cafe with a friend when a woman I didn't immediately recognize stopped by the table to say hello to my friend. When my friend introduced us, we quickly figured out how we already knew each other. It was poetic running into her. This woman who had unwittingly played such a pivotal role in my career at that precise moment. "I just wrote about you," I blurted out excitedly. When Amy looked at me in confusion, I explained the law of giving to her. She matter-of-factly stated that she had the exact same attitude about giving, and threw up her hands in a whatever happens gesture, explaining that she did things without ever expecting that she would get anything in return. Even after our other friend left, Amy and I continued chatting like childhood friends for more than an hour. We picked up right where we'd left off, trying to catch up on the dozens of things that had been going on in each of our lives. She told me that she had just applied for a job. It happened to be with an organization that I'd worked with for years. Finally, there was something I could do for her. We set up a lunch date to discuss all the ways we might help each other and even work together. As soon as I got home, I called the director of the organization to learn more about the position Amy was applying for, and then I submitted a written recommendation of her. I also sent her a link to other open positions she was qualified for at the organization. Once you start fully living the law of giving, you will find that you are eager to do kindnesses for people who do them for you. But the law of patience isn't just about trusting that the good things you do will positively impact you or others. It's about trusting that you will have the chance to give back for the generosity you've been shown. When you can't yet give back directly for help you've received, pay it forward, and trust that you may well get your chance to directly help the people who have selflessly helped you. When you can't give back right away, sometimes the opportunity you do eventually receive to give back is even bigger and better than you may have thought possible. Since reconnecting with Amy, I've been able to make introductions for her and give her references that have helped her land work with 2 major organizations. I have also been able to mentor her, though I can hardly believe it, about pricing and client selection. Be patient. The ways you can give may not be immediately obvious, but you will get your chance. Friendships grow in time. Throughout this book, we've looked at building relationships. The truth of it is that you won't want to build relationships with every single person you meet, and that is okay. There's no need to burn bridges with those people. You can simply choose not to pursue the relationships. But remember, too, that friendships can take time to grow. We all have that childhood friend we love, but we know that if we met that person for the first time today, we probably wouldn't be friends. This plays itself out in our adult lives, too, and we need to remember that sometimes it pays to be patient. For me, my relationship with my sister April is one of the strongest examples of the principle that friendships grow with time. Even though we're siblings, we couldn't be more different. She has tremendous innate skill as a designer, putting together colors, textures, materials, and patterns, and she has single-handedly redesigned entire rooms in her house to stunning effect. I have none of these gifts, and when I was decorating my own house, I relied on her expertise every step of the way. I excel at more traditionally academic, less artistic fields, so when April is sending a critical communication, She runs it by me first for feedback on language, content, messaging, and tone. She tends to be a bit messy. I'm meticulously organized. She loves and follows fashion, which I've never had a strong passion for. I love adventure, scary rides, and roughing it. 3 things that she more than happily lives without. Our natural skills and abilities are diametrically opposite in almost every instance, and yet she unfailingly knows what and how I think almost as well as I do, and we constantly rely on one another's unique strengths and gifts. Time and shared experiences are key ingredients to creating bonds that last. I first met Gabby when I was still working on Wall Street. We were introduced by a mutual friend who thought we would click. We'd both gone to the same business school, and we were building our own businesses in the same field. With all that to talk about, I anticipated becoming fast friends. She came to my office for an hour-long conversation, but when she left, I felt oddly let down. Nothing clicked. There was no bonding as if we'd known one another forever because of all our similarities. Our talk was interesting, but I was left feeling neutral. I hadn't yet learned to let go of my expectations around people as well. Since there was so much overlap in our interests and potential for collaboration, we planned a follow-up meeting. It was on my way to the second appointment that my mother's advice to me as a teenager came to mind. She used to say, "Give a guy 3 dates. If the first one isn't going well, you are having a bad day. If the second one isn't going well, he is having a bad day. If the third date doesn't go well, then you know you gave it a chance." After the second meeting with Gabby, I still saw the professional potential in our relationship, but didn't think about it much beyond that. We continued pursuing some common projects, and almost imperceptibly began to blur the line between business and friendship. I don't know how many times Gabby and I got together before I started to think of her as a friend. Certainly it was more than my mother's magic 3. But she is now one of my most valued friends, and has been for years. If I hadn't been patient and remained open to the possibility that our relationship could grow, I would have missed out not only on a great business associate, but also a wonderful friend. I also would have missed out on a valuable lesson about building solid relationships with people who are different from me. Sometimes those can wind up being the strongest bonds, since we have to give them the time and room to develop. For all the outward similarities Gabby and I had, it turned out that we had quite different styles. She is an introvert with quiet confidence. When she thinks, she does it in silence. I am an extrovert and a processor, and I think about something by talking through it out loud. While getting to know Gabby, I had to adjust my style so that I didn't come on too strong or push for a closeness that neither of us were authentically feeling right off the bat. When you are impatient with a relationship, your actions can be read as pushy or needy, not exactly likable qualities. Truly lasting friendships are rarely instantaneous. Give them time and room to grow. Now when I meet someone new, I look for the ways we may connect and the things we might build a relationship on, and I find humor in what makes us different. Having acquaintances is great, but I always remind myself that they might turn into relationships somewhere down the road. Stay open to the possibilities inherent in connection, and always have the conversation. Be patient. As I was writing this book, I attended a conference and ran into Cheryl, another colleague of mine. We regularly cross paths, but this time, as we were talking with a few other people, she said, "Michelle is a terrific networker." Then she looked at me and asked, "It comes back to you, right?" I looked at her curiously, thinking about the question, and said, "It goes somewhere. I don't really keep track. Sometimes if you give to someone, they give to someone else, and that's fine with me. I am happy as long as it keeps going. I don't keep a scorecard." Patience is the culminating chapter of this book because it's needed to embrace the other laws. We must have patience with ourselves and with others. Patience to find the similarities, build the relationship, establish trust, and create familiarity. Having patience means choosing to do something without expecting to get something back. It means doing it because you can and because you want to. Being patient means knowing and trusting that somewhere in the universe, some person or some good cause is benefiting from the way you have lived the laws of likability. Refresh your memory. The law of patience. Give it time. Things happen. It comes back to you, or it goes somewhere else. You may not know what the results of your generous actions will be, or whether you will ever directly benefit from them. That's okay. Kindness repays kindness, even if it's not in obvious ways. You'll get your chance. Be patient with yourself. You never know how or when you may be able to bring value to someone else. Friendships grow in time. Stay open to the possibility that a relationship may evolve over time. Have patience. Conclusion. Putting the book into action. Likability is more than a nice idea, or a concept of which you should stay mindful. It is an approach to your life and the people in it. The point isn't for you to like everyone, and for everyone to like you. Instead, the point is to create meaningful connections that strengthen your relationships, your self-awareness, your productivity, and inevitably, your results. Be authentic in your interactions, and follow the paths of what you truly want to do, not what you think you should do. Although the abiding principle is set out in Law number 1, the Law of Authenticity, the book is not meant to be linear. All the laws of likability are intertwined, and work in concert with one another. Based on where you are in your career and how you want to enhance your relationships, you can focus in on the laws that will be most useful for you at this point in time. Choose one and work on incorporating it into your interactions with other people. Once it has become second nature, choose a new law to focus on. Apply the laws with openness and authenticity in mind, and you will become more connected. People ask me all the time, how do you get your clients, and how do you build your business? This book is my attempt to answer those questions. I never knew quite how to explain it until I began to fully understand the value of likability. I used to think that likability was something nice, but nothing that needed to be taken too seriously. But after that one fateful day in my NYU classroom, I realized that likability is the key to the whole process of developing meaningful relationships. It is the essential bedrock upon which everything else is built. My business has grown because I live the book. I go out of my way to provide value beyond the work I am hired to do, without expecting that I will get anything in return. I find that I get repeat business from the clients with whom I have built the strongest relationships, and those relationships have been able to grow because we've found commonalities. We've been proactive about staying in touch, and therefore staying in one another's minds, and we talk about things other than work. We simply like each other, and people do business with people they like.
This has been a Gildan audio production. For more affordable life-changing audio programs, visit our website at gildanmedia.com.